Welcome to another episode of Boomer Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today, talking about the defensive tackles interior D-line. And at the end of this episode, we're going to do the real grade for the Minnesota Vikings, looking 3 years back at the 2016 draft. Of course, if you want to have more detailed information, you can click the link in the description box that'll take you to the notes for this year's draft. And there you will see more players and a little bit more detailed notes about each player. All right, so with that being said, let's just start with the number one player, because we got, I would say, top four. It would be a top four, not just a top three. This is a pretty stacked group. So number one, we got Quintin Williams out of Alabama. For me, I'm really high on him. I think the hype is real. He's got top three, type hype right now, and I would agree with it. Some people think he could be the number one pick. Now for me, he definitely reminds me a little bit of Aaron Donald, and some people will go crazy with that because at the time when Aaron Donald came out, nobody was, tripping over themselves to run and go get him. But now they know what he is now. So it's like, oh, whoa, how could you say he's like Aaron Donald? Because I actually watched Aaron Donald as a prospect coming out. And the thing about Quintin that reminds me of Aaron Donald, and it's not his complete game, but he constantly is looking to get hands off, as we say, hands off policy. And so when you got a player that is constantly looking to shed blocks, at least to me, I think that makes them the most disruptive they can be. You got guys that like to tangle up with people, like to play a little bully ball, like to, kind of bull rush the lineman and just kind of mess up plays that way, which is fine and all. You definitely need that, especially in the odd front. But when you want just straight pass rush, when you want to know how a defensive tackle could get 21 sacks, it's when you have a hands-off policy. And for me, D-line's always, a little tougher grade because that's what I coach traditionally. So I have higher standards. And for me, I've always taught hands off. Like I tell my players that if you want to make a play, it's going to be a lot easier if nobody's blocking you. And it's a simple concept that we all could say, like, yeah, get off the block. But I'm telling you, it is hard to do. And that is the reason you don't see a lot of players that are able to do it every year. Because for whatever reason, football players want to just tangle up. They love sticking to blocks. There's nothing more that I hate than a defensive lineman that loves sticking to blocks. It's like they don't want to leave them. I don't know why. But if you trust your keys and you read them and you know where you're actually going, you don't have to wait for the lineman to take you there. You don't have to wait to follow them or see the play. You just get in your gap. You do what you're assigned to do. You get off the block, and then whatever it is, whether it's a pass or if it's a screenplay or run play, whatever, if you get off your block, it's going to be a lot easier for you to make that play. So anyway, that's what you got with Quintin Williams, a guy that constantly looking to get hands off, has great hand technique, not elite, I would say. I seen a little better like Bradley Chubb last year, but it's good, and he has the mindset to get off blocks and get upfield. And so when you're talking about getting him in a even front where he's able to play three technique like Aaron Donald used to play, kind of Gerald McCoy, Warren Sapp, those guys where they can get one-on-one on that guard's shoulder and just get upfield in the gap and wreak havoc. That's the type of disruption you're looking to get from Quinn Williams. Now, they had him at nose in Alabama, and I saw this a little bit this year where people were putting some of their better athletes on the nose. And that's definitely an old high school thing. Like for people who play high school football, you remember sometimes they'll put like a really short guy or a really small wrestler, and just put him on the nose and let him wreak havoc. That's kind of that idea where he's just too fast, for these centers. And so he did a lot of disruption there. And he was able to hold his ground, but I think the run game is where I think he needs to improve a little bit, especially taking on double teams. Now, he's not a soft cookie or anything. He can hold his ground for the most part. And I think most of these guys have the same issue where they just need to have better take on technique and not get moved off the ball so much. And so I would like to see him hold his gap a little better. And I think he could do it. I just think he's such in a penetration mindset that sometimes in the run game, he lets his gap, become a little too vulnerable, or that he'll get pushed off the ball. And then the other thing that makes him completely different than Aaron Donald is his motor. Aaron Donald had a serious motor, as we all know, and still does. Quintin Williams does not have that motor. I mean, looking at him move around, I think he can run down plays and make plays athletically, but it seems like once the play's nowhere near him, or once the play is a little bit away from him, he just stops. He's like, yeah, no, I'm not chasing that. And so that's definitely an area of improvement that he can have. All right. So then after Q, I would say number 2, everybody has Ed Oliver out of Houston, who has an interesting little, thing going on right now. Cause apparently some people are saying that he might need to switch to inside linebacker. And he does have a little bit of a tweener body where he's not super tall. I think he's about a little over 6'2", but his arms aren't really long. And, you know, he's not like 330 pounds either. He's under 300 pounds. So it's like, where exactly do you place him? Now, typically you would put somebody like that, the 3 technique, like I was just talking about with Q. However, with the lack of length, people are wondering if he's going to get swallowed up by blocks and stuff. And so we've seen position changes before. Going from D tackle to inside linebacker, I'm not sure that's going to work. Not even from the body type thing, because people can transform their bodies if you need them to. But I just don't think mentality wise that you're going to be able to switch a defensive tackle to a linebacker. Linebacker is already hard for people who played it their whole career to really master. And then you want to have somebody that never played it that way. And that's a totally different skill set from getting off the ball and, you know, making plays that way to being off the ball and being able to see plays happen. I don't know if that's going to happen. But what I will say is I'm not a big fan of him, so I understand why people might have concern. I mean, we've had undersized people before. Aaron Donald's not, I don't even think he's actually over 6 foot. So it's not like we haven't had undersized people. I'm not sure exactly why they're trying to switch, but for me, his game is just, vanilla. I mean, I see him just play bully ball a lot. Like, he has a nice get off and he has some nice natural strength, but really I just see him explode into the next person and that's it. Like, he shows some hand technique, but not often. Often it's a lot of bully ball. It's a lot of bull rushing. It's a lot of just running around. He's a spark plug. I give him that. He runs around a lot, has a pretty good motor, looking to make plays and continues to kind of just be an energizer bunny, and that kind of gets him a lot of plays. But overall, I don't think he has great technique or any one thing about him that makes him a top, 3 defensive tackle in my mind. So, he's a very interesting case. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out with him. Some people still think he's a D lineman, so it only takes one team to take a chance. So we'll see. All right. So outside of that, we got Christian Wilkins from Clemson, who I really like. I think he's about 6'4", I want to say 6'3". And so I think typically he probably would be in the even front, not an odd front. In the odd front, like a 3-4, whatever. Usually those guys are a lot bigger, a lot taller. But I wouldn't say he's a traditional 3 technique either. So you'll have to be in the even front where there's some that they can play both. And they kind of let both defensive tackles do both things between a 1 technique and a 3 technique, or, different things like that, A-gap and B-gap player. And so I think he would fit there where he could kind of do both, because he's not just a straight nose 1 technique either. He's got definitely more athleticism than that. And so I think he could fit in both places. But Christian Wilkins is pretty good. I really like his hand technique. And I really like his pursuit to the quarterback. Kind of like I was saying with the hands off policy. And I mentioned before with the DNs, the other hardest thing for D linemen is that continuing to move your feet to the quarterback. Very simple concept, very hard for people to grasp. When Wilkins is constantly moving to the quarterback and constantly pursuing in his pass rush, a lot of good plays happen, especially on that D line. So I definitely appreciated that from him. But I think his hand technique is good too. You're talking about quick swims and quick moves, as well as power counters and everything else. So even if you're talking about twisting stunts too, which some players are only good at twisting stunts. That's how they get their pass rush. But I think Wilkins is good at both. So I think anything you really ask him to do, much like Cleveland Farrell, he'll be really good at it. So after seeing him last year, I didn't think that he would be this type of draft pick, but you can't really deny he put on a really solid performance this year. And then lastly, you would probably have Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State, who probably would have been a top 2 prospect if it wasn't for the off the field video that came out. I'm not moved by it. Every year we talk about these things, especially now where people keep popping things up right as people are about to have a big moment in their life. Like, it's so ridiculous to me. And so we're talking about something he did in high school. That's on video that people already knew. This video didn't just surface. Like, the video's been out there, whether you knew about it or not. Like, they knew this happened to him. And so I'm not about to vilify him for that. He was for something he did in high school. Not to excuse it that he was young, but you knew about it, and this was so many years ago. So anyway, as far as the player, I really like him, very much like Q. Very, very much like Q, actually. I mean, really good hands-off policy, really good athleticism. I think he might be one of the more athletic ones out of the group. Constantly making plays and chasing things down with a great motor. I mean, great motor. Always trying to be involved. And that's only going to get you good plays when you stay involved. But again, you're talking about a guy that could go one-on-one and beat a guard from that 3 technique position and get quick penetration, quick pressure. You're talking about a person that can do the stunts and twist outside or inside and make big plays. You're talking about somebody that can do some counter moves too, not just quick penetration. Now, the issue I have with him is the same I have with Q, is his ability in the run game. And Simmons is a little worse because Simmons isn't as big as Q. So Simmons in double teams, I mean, it's not terrible, but he's been blown off the ball a little too much for my liking. And you're going to have linemen and teams that are just going to do that. But in the NFL, everybody's big, so you got to be able to take that on with better technique. I just think Jeffrey stands up a lot, and which is kind of amazing, the production he gets for standing up a lot. But he does stand up too much. I mean, you gotta he can play with Ben, but you gotta play with low pad level constantly, especially in the run game, because that's how you lose leverage. And so he definitely has the ability to get down and bend. He just kind of plays standing up too much. And so and you get that with athletic D linemen, because they kind of want to stand up and run around like linebackers. So that's definitely something that you deal with, but he's going to have to get lower than that, because the double teams that I saw against some of the power run teams really hurt him. And in the NFL, they will take advantage of that. I mean, if you're a pass rusher, people are going to value that more. But if you want to be a complete player, I think he has to get better at that and better at holding his gap. But in the zone, much like Q, much like a lot of these guys, he's a monster wrecking the zone because he's so fast. He's going to be able to split that movement and get in the backfield. And so I see a lot of tackles for loss with him. So I would definitely have him in my top 3 instead of Ed Oliver. All right, so outside of the top guys, one guy that I really like is Jerry Tillery out of Notre Dame, and I was shocked because Notre Dame, especially, you kind of have a mold of their D lineman, and you're like, okay, it's going to be this type of guy, but a little different now. Not as much as these 3-4, gap stuffers. Now they got a little more penetration going on with that defense. And Tillery, he's 6'6", like right under 300 pounds. So you're like, okay, typical. But no, he's got a lean frame. He's not one of those power pigs, as we used to say. And so he's interesting. He's the only one out of the group that I project as a 3-4 DN, which is crazy that I probably looked at 10, 15 guys that you don't have but one 3-4 DN. Usually there's a ton of them. So that's different. This year's different. But that's kind of what I project him as, even though he's not super big. 300 some pounds is good enough. 6'6" with that long reach. That's what they're looking for in a 3-4. But he can move, man. He can move to the point where I think he might be able to be a strong side DN in an even front. And so, I wouldn't be shocked if he was able to do that too. I don't think he's a 3-tech or a 1-tech or any of that. He's not a nose. He's really long and he's quick enough and fluid enough where I think he's going to be able to play on the edge if you wanted to, but I would personally have him as a 3-4 DN. And you could do one of those teams with a lot of stunts, a lot of games, because he's got real good movement skills. He holds his ground because he's naturally so big, and he'll be able to take on double teams and those types of things. But I don't think he's especially a great pass rusher one-on-one. He has moments, but I think he's going to be much better in a blitzing team that moves him around. So Jerry Tillery is an interesting prospect for me. And then the other Clemson guy, Dexter Lawrence, I think he very different than Christian Wilkins, but it kind of shows you that's the type of scheme you want, where you move Wilkins and Lawrence around, where they both, no one was just at the 1-tech, no one was just at the 3-tech. They both did a little bit of both. And I think, I wouldn't say Dexter Lawrence should do both in the NFL, but he's got enough movement skills and enough pass rushing skills where he can do more than just plug up space. So I still think he's a 1 technique, and he could be a 0 in a 3-4. Straight nose, but I actually think he has a little more polish to him and a little more athleticism to him. But 330 pounds, hard to move, really good at shedding blocks. You could tell he's naturally strong, and so I think he's going to be. He reminds me of a bigger version of Eddie Goldman, and so I think he's going to be a really good player as well. All right, so now that all that is out of the way, let's get to the real grade for the Minnesota Vikings. So we go back to 2016, and we have, 8 draft picks. Out of the 8 draft picks, we'll just go down. You got Laquan Treadwell, out of Ole Miss, still with the team. Kind of starting. You got Mackenzie Alexander from Clemson still with the team. Kind of starting. Willie Beavers, Western Michigan, out of the league. Kentrell Brothers from Mizzou still on the team. Kind of a special teamer. You got this receiver from Germany. I can't pronounce his name. But he was out of the league. You got David Morgan, tight end, still on the team. Kind of starting too. You got Stephen Weatherly, outside linebacker, now DN, who is still on the team, kind of started. And you got Jerron Kearse out of Clemson, who is still on the team, special teamer. So out of 8 picks, 6 are still on the team. The 2 that aren't on the team are out of the league. The ones that out of the league was a 4th round pick, and then the other one was a 6th round flyer from Germany. So not too, 4th round picks hurt. You gotta get knocked for that. And then the 6th round was a flyer, so I'd call that a wash. Now, this is an interesting draft because most of them are still on the team, which is typically good. You want to retain your players and have them be good enough to stay on the roster. However, nobody's really starting. I mean, again, Laquan is kind of a starter by default, but not really. McKenzie started playing games this year as far as being a starter, but never really lived up to that second round pick, nor did Laquan. Brothers doesn't start as a special teamer. David Morgan starts some games for them. Weatherly starts some games for them. Curse is a backup. So even though you got 6 of the 8 still on the team, nobody is like overachieving what they were supposed to do. And then on top of that, your first and second round pick didn't really pan out the way they were supposed to. So overall, I'm going to give this a C. All right, so go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about the Vikings draft. What grade would you give it? Let me know what you think about the interior D-line class. Any players in particular you're excited for, got a question about, or any other people I didn't mention that you are interested in. Go to the comment section, get a conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.